Hi, everybody. We're just going to give it a minute or two to let everybody join as we've just opened up the webinar to all of our participants. So we'll get started in just a minute. So for those of you guys who are still joining us, we still are watching people come in. So I'm just going to give it another minute. Thanks for your patience. We'll get started in just a minute. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of your time, but I wanted to just welcome everybody and say thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the IQP application process. We're thrilled to be launching the 2023-2024 IQP applications. I also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself as I am new to WPI. So my name is Kathleen Head, and I'm the new director of the Global Experience Office. I'm really looking forward to meeting many of you. I hope to see many, if not all of you, at the Global Fair next Wednesday. And I'm really looking forward to supporting you all in your pursuit of an off-campus IQP. So with that, again, thanks for joining us. I am going to pass this along to my colleague, Deb Pissarro, who is one of the program coordinators in the Global Experience Office, to get started.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm just going to take a moment before we begin our actual presentation to explain a little bit about how this kickoff will work today. The session is about an hour. We will have a presentation and then have time for questions and answers from you all. So if you have any questions along the way, please type them into the Q&A box, and we will respond to as many questions as possible in the time allowed. So all of the attendees will be muted throughout the video because this is the webinar interface for Zoom. And this presentation will be recorded and we'll post it to YouTube afterwards. The link will be found on our website, wpi.edu/+off-campus IQP. So again, I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us. As Kathleen mentioned, my name is Deb Pissarro. I'm a program coordinator in the Global Experience Office. Our office supports the Global Projects Program and all other WPI-sponsored off-campus travel. We're here to help guide you through the off-campus IQP application process. And today, I'm excited to be showing you an overview of the process and guiding you in the next steps you should take if you plan to participate. Kathleen also mentioned our Global Fair. That's our big event where we showcase our IQP, MQP, Humanities and Arts, and exchange programs. This year's fair will be held in the Rec Center on Wednesday, September 14th, from 2 to 4 p.m. If you attend the fair, you'll have the opportunity to speak with project center directors from over 50 project centers. All IQP centers will be represented, and sophomores are strongly encouraged to attend. You can stop by anytime between 2 and 4 p.m. The Global Fair is one of many places where you can find out more about how to apply to the off-campus IQP. Here are a couple of helpful links to bookmark. We recently sent out a newsletter with important IQP application information. You can find the newsletter on our website, and we posted short videos to walk you through each step of the process as well. You can visit eProjects at eprojects.wpi.edu for detailed information about project centers. Also on our website, we've broken down the application process into 3 separate steps: explore, prepare, and apply. Now is the time to start exploring your options for IQP. You have the option to complete your IQP off campus in the 1-term model through the Global Projects Program, or on campus, which is typically over 3 terms. Dive into eProjects, where you can read more about the project centers, watch the site-specific videos created by our project center directors, and learn about budgeting and medical care and risks associated with each project. Our events during the Global Fair are meant to complement the information that you're going to be finding on eProjects. For more details on this step of the process, watch the IQP Explained video on YouTube. The link to that video can be found on the website, plus off-campus IQP. The next step in the process is preparing your application. For a full preview of the application, visit our website. You'll also want to be thinking about your project center preferences at this time. We're recruiting now for programs running in E23 through E24, so the whole 23-24 academic year. There are over 60 site term options available to you in this time span, so there's a lot for you to think about. And I know it says on my slide here E22 to E23, and that's incorrect, and I apologize for that. It's E23 to E24. In applying to the off-campus IQP, one of the most important things I'd like you to remember is that you are applying to the program as a whole and not to a specific project or project term. We're going to be asking you to complete a preference form to indicate your top project center preferences. For more details about getting started, watch our IQP Where to Begin video. The link is also on our website. Once you're ready to apply, you'll click on the Apply Now button in any program page on eProjects, or find the application in the Forms library. The application is now open. Your completed application form is only one part of a 2-part application process. The second part of the application is the preference form, which will be available on the Forms library on eProjects on September 9th. The preference form is where you'll be able to let us know which project centers are of interest to you. Both the application form and the preference form are due by October 3rd at 9 a.m. Give yourself some time to think carefully about your preference form. Remember, we will only consider you for placement in sites that you have rated as very interested or interested. This can sometimes be a confusing process. So make sure to watch the IQP How to Apply video. You can find the link to that on our website. This is a very helpful video in completing your application. So here's our contact information. We are in the newly named Laurie A. Leshin Global Project Center. We are on the first floor. You can email us at global@wpi.edu, and you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. A couple of other resources that I just wanted to put up here that you may want to reach out to as you are making your application and decisions about traveling off campus. Academic advising can be very helpful to figure out how your schedule might look and what might be the best time for you to go away. And the Writing Center is available to help you with your IQP application essays. So that was quick and easy. And now comes your opportunity to ask us questions that you have on your mind, and I'd be happy to answer those. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll be available to answer your questions.
Thank you
Hello,
so much.
everyone.
Thank you, Deb. We do have a question that came in when you were presenting related to, really the question is there a way to guarantee that I will only be admitted to an IQP in a certain term? So can students apply and be guaranteed a term?
I'm going to say for the most part, yes. You need to be very careful about how you fill out your preference form. You need to make sure that you are only marking as interested or very interested project centers that occur in the term that you are able to travel. So if you are only able to travel in D term, only put D term project centers into your very interested and interested categories, and make sure that the other terms, projects and terms listed are marked as not interested. There's one other reason why I don't say unequivocally that you would not get placed in, you might get placed or you wouldn't get a single term. It might happen that you make your selections for a particular term and don't get placed because you have limited your selections. That happens infrequently during our large application process that we're talking about now. So I'm not going to say that that's something you really have to be concerned about, but do take care when you're filling out your form. Kathleen, I can't, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
we have some more questions.
Great.
One question that a student has is, what does the Global Scholarship pay for?
That's a good question. So the Global Scholarship covers, let me go back just a little bit. When you're looking on eProjects, you're going to find a budget sheet. And on the budget sheet is listed billable costs and non-billable costs. The billable costs are mainly housing, and there may be some excursions or administrative fee that's included in your billable costs. Those are covered as long as they're under $5,000, up to $5,000. If they are under $5,000, you get another up to, I think, $1,500 to go towards the cost of the non-billable or out-of-pocket expenses. And I just want to explain a little bit how that is applied, because you will not receive that money directly to prior to your project to pay for your plane tickets or any expenses that you incur before travel. The scholarship is it's credited to your student account for the term that you'll be traveling. So it will be say up to $5,000 credited to your account. So you won't actually see any additional money coming to you. You will see it as a reduction in the amount that you have to pay for that term.
Thank you.
That
Yeah,
was
we have
clear.
a lot of, there are a lot of questions about that. So thank you, because you've
Mhm.
already answered some other questions that have been coming in. Another question that came in is about capacity at our sites. So how limited are the number of students in terms of what's allowed at any given project site?
For the most part, most of our project centers have cohorts of 24 students per term. There are a couple of centers that may have 16. Those are not usually our most popular centers anyway. They are centers that are normally undersubscribed anyway. So it's not, you know, the reduced number of students really doesn't impact us that much. Some of our project centers have cohorts of 24 students for 2 or 3 terms. So there are plenty of opportunities at this juncture.
Great. And then another question is about just time frame and when students submit their applications. So if a student submits earlier, do they get any priority on project preferences? So is there any benefit to applying early, or is it all the same?
There is no benefit to applying early. The way it's done is the application is open from, I think it opened on Friday, and it is open until October 3rd, and we will close it on October 3rd. Students have that time to get their application in, both the application form and the preference form. And it's not first come, first serve in any way. What we do is we take the whole applicant pool, and this is kind of amazing to me because our students, previous MQP groups, have created an algorithm and a program for us that simultaneously places all 1,000 plus applicants at the same time. So there is no benefit to applying early. However, if you wait until the last minute to apply, if you're applying on the last day and trying to get it in, we have seen difficulties with some students with applying very late to the program. There have been years where there's been such a glut in students trying to upload their resumes at the last minute that it has caused significant slowdowns. And then people start pushing buttons and it slows the system down even further. So if you want to avoid stress and anxiety with getting your application in by the deadline, please think of doing it at least a week before the deadline.
Thank you so much. And so Deb's answering some questions that are coming in. So someone asked how are students placed, so she just explained that. And then the second question that the student asked related to that was, what determines who gets placed first? And I think Deb kind of explained it's this algorithm. So there really isn't who gets placed first or second. It all happens at one time,
Yes.
really.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question. Another student asked, will we get more prompts and or maybe information on deadlines and applications?
So right now, there's a lot of information that we've sent out there, and I'm very happy that you're here today. This is one of the venues. Our global projects, our global fair is another venue where you can get more information. We have sent out our email newsletter that you should have received. I believe that went out last Thursday. All of that has information on dates and deadline. We have a few things in the works. If you go onto eProjects, you should see an announcement on your login page that announces that the application is now open. We will be announcing the Global Fair on eProjects as well, and we will be announcing the opening of the preference form and deadlines. Shortly, you should see a sandwich board outside of the project center near the fountain that will have a list of our deadlines, and also of other important dates along the way, such as our our student drop-ins, where you can come into the Global Experience office and talk with one of our staffs who will help you with your application and answer any questions you might have individually.
Great. And then I have a couple students who have asked some questions about that I think are somewhat related. So one student has asked if there's any restriction to which project a student can work on, maybe depending on their major. So do certain project sites only accept certain majors? And then the second question is, does language experience or language courses give priority, or is that taken into account at all in the application process and application and placement process?
Yeah, those are good questions. Your major does not really count. It doesn't hinder you or benefit you in any way, really, in the application process itself. And I'll say that because the IQP is an interdisciplinary project, and it is not meant to be major specific. That's your MQP that you hopefully undertake in your senior year. The IQP is just, it's meant to be a way for you to work with other students and other and government agencies and sponsors and students of from different backgrounds and different majors, and in an interdisciplinary way. And so your major is not going to factor into the application process pretty much at all. There are a few, and very few, project center directors who like to try to make sure that they have a couple of CS majors in their cohort, or maybe mechanical if they have specific projects that are that need that sort of expertise. But for the most part, no. As far as language goes, though, that's a little bit of a different story. So we have a few project centers, and they're mostly our Spanish-speaking centers, that do have requirements for some language ability. And when you go on to e-projects and look at program preparation and requirements on e-projects, you'll see that they have listed what it is they require. And I know offhand that Cuenca, Ecuador has a Spanish requirement that students will need to take at least one Spanish language course at WPI. Native speakers can test out of that requirement. Other project centers that require Spanish are Costa Rica project centers. And so your language will benefit you if you have language ability, or if you have, if you are willing to take language courses here. Some project centers will accept that as your willingness to learn the language as into consideration as well. The other aspect of taking languages and cultural courses is this year, for the first time, we have a section in our application which will allow you to state a preference for one of our 4 cultural hubs or geographical hubs. And they are the China hub, the Africa hub, the Europe hub, and the Latin America hub. And if you check off that portion of the application, then you'll be given a section where you can include your language courses and any cultural courses that you've taken. And this can benefit you in that it shows that as part of your academic career and interests here at WPI, you are choosing to pursue your interests in these hubs, and we would like that to continue with your IQP. So it can come into play if you choose to. If you don't choose to, it does not negatively affect your application at all.
Great. And then I'm just going to switch gears a little bit because I'm seeing some questions just about, what's required kind of in preparation for your IQP. So once you're placed, what classes do you take in advance? So basic questions like what is PQP? What is ID 2050? So if you can explain that a little bit in terms of what they are and when the students will take those. And then I have another question that I'll follow up with once you get to that.
Okay, great. So the first thing that I want to say is that I have created 3 videos that take you through this. And the first video, the IQP Explained, is a more detailed look at what IQP is, how it fits into your schedule, how you might make a decision about whether you'd like to do an off-campus IQP through the Global Projects Program, or whether you would like to do an on-campus IQP, which is structured a bit differently than our program. It also shows how your schedule would look for an on-campus IQP as opposed to an off-campus IQP. It will show you where you would be taking your prep course, the ID 2050 methods and cultural prep course that is required of every off-campus IQP through the Global Projects Program. And that course is always taken the term prior to the term in which you'll be doing your project, except for anyone doing an A-term project. Your ID 2050 would be done in the D term prior to your project work. One of the other things that you might have questions about is called the PQP, and that is also done in the term preceding your project term. And what that is a 1/6 credit. It's not exactly a course. What it is your team, your project team, usually about 4 students per project team, will meet weekly with your project advisors at a mutually agreeable time. And that is credit bearing, 1/6 credit, but it is not a standard scheduled course.
And I have a clarifying question that one of the students submitted about ID 2050 and the timing. So if a student gets placed in an A term IQP and they're taking ID 2050 and PQP in the preceding D term, is there any work that they have to be doing over the summer?
That depends on which project center that you're in. Some project centers require some work over the summer. A lot of time it's reading, or sometimes it's watching a movie or 2 that relate to your project center. The best place to go for answers to those questions is the eProjects program page for the project that you're interested in. If there are any cultural prep that needs to be done either the term before or even the term before that one, so 2 terms before your project term, it will say what that is on the eProjects program page for the project center.
Great. And then the other question that I got about ID 2050 is about overloading. And so some students are asking, are they going to be overloading when they're taking ID 2050, the term prior to their IQP?
The 1/6 credit for PQP will not put you in overload unless you have overloaded in the term in the same semester. So say you're taking your PQP in B term. If you overloaded in A term, then your PQP is going to cause an overload. If you didn't, then that 1/6 PQP will not cause an overload.
Great. Sorry, I'm
It's okay.
running through.
Mhm.
Another question that someone asked was whether or not it was possible to do IQP during their senior year. They suggested perhaps after MQP, but is IQP senior year allowed?
IQP senior year is allowed. It's not the typical way that our students do their IQP or their MQP, but we actually had a student worker in our office who did his MQP prior to his IQP. So it is done, and some students just find that that works best for their schedule. The one thing I want to caution is that, or not necessarily caution, but one of the benefits of doing your IQP first is the ID 2050 course, because that is a course where you learn a lot about research methods and how to do a project. So it's a guided, it's a little bit more guided than your MQP would be. So it would be really good to have that kind of coursework under your belt when you're starting a project. That's not to say that you can't, and you can do your MQP first if it works for you, but there is a benefit to doing your IQP first and taking the ID 2050.
Great. And then there are some questions just about what projects are available for the 23-24 year. So is it fair to assume that what's currently posted on, what students see on e-projects is what we're offering? For example, someone said, what if there was a project center that's not currently available, but it was offered in the past? So will there be more projects that are added to e-projects, or is what's out there now what we're offering?
Okay, right now, what's out there now is what we're offering. But that doesn't mean that if a great opportunity comes up, and we're working on opportunities all the time, if one of them comes up by September 9th, when our preference form is published, then we'll be adding that in to the form. If you have seen something that was run in the past, but you're not seeing it for 2023, 2024, then we're probably not running it. And I'd say we're most likely not running it. Everything out there, a check a couple of days ago, it's accurate right now as it stands. So if there's a program that you had hoped we were running and you don't see it out there now, we may not be running it. There were a couple of programs that had run in the past that that you will not see out there.
Great. And just kind of generally, as I'm scrolling through questions, there are some questions just about like the different components of the application, and should students be focusing on one thing more than the other, and there were some additional questions kind of about the algorithm and what that really prioritizes, or how it works. So if you could give any more context around that would be great.
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's no good answer to that, because there is no specific part of the application that you should focus on. And I'm going to explain a little bit about how the algorithm works in order to explain how why I'm saying that no particular part. There's no focus on a particular part. So there are, I'd say, 3 main components that go into the algorithm. The first one is your application, and your application will be reviewed by project center directors, not any, they're randomly assigned to project center directors, and they score them according to set rubrics, and you get a score for each portion of your application. The second part of that is the directors also fill out a form stating what they're looking for in students to participate in their project centers. And what that means is, for each part of your application, say your essays, if they're looking for a good writer, students that do, that write well and express themselves well, they're going to be saying that the essay part of the application is important. There are other directors who are looking for students who have higher GPAs or who have leadership experience on their resume. So each portion of your application has a score, and the directors are allowed to weight that score for their particular project center. And the third, and what I think is the most important piece of this, is your preference form. Because for every project center, your application will have a score. If you rate a project center very interested, your score for that project center will be multiplied by 1. If you rate that project center interested, your score for that project center will be multiplied by 0.5. And if you say that you are not interested in that project center, your score for that project center will be multiplied by 0. So you'll get a 0 score and you will not be placed in that project center.
So,
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
that's okay, I'm sorry. So I can't say that you need to focus on a particular section because every director has a different combination of things that they're looking for in students. And so my advice is to just do your best on your application and put your best foot forward in each category, and to take care and make sure that you fill out your preference form correctly according to your preferences. And don't try to game the preference form, because students try to do that sometimes and it doesn't work out. Be 100% honest about where you want to go, which are your very interested spots. And do not, this is not like college entrance, do not pick a safety site. Because if you decide that, oh, I'm going to just put Worcester as a safety, you'll probably get put in Worcester. If you put a very undersubscribed site, some of our domestic sites are always undersubscribed, and you choose that as one of your interested sites, you will most likely be placed in that site.
And so some students are asking about if they want to kind of provide a bit more context, or so to reiterate, Deb is saying really be honest and thoughtful about filling out your preference form, while also maintaining that flexibility and understanding that you're applying to the project as a whole. But if students wanted to provide a bit more context about their preferences and or what they've submitted in their application, where might they do that? Or is it the preference
well,
form?
the preference form, you are going to be required to choose 6 project sites at the very least. And 3 of those should be in the very interested category, and 6 or more can be in the very interested and interested categories. And we don't deviate from that because that is the way the algorithm works. It's the way that nobody can game the system by just putting one place and then we'll automatically get placed in that place. So this is how it has to work in order for us to place over 1,000 students. And we have a great placement rate. We place usually over 85% of our students get one of their very interested sites. We place almost 90 students in the process altogether. So it works, and it works much better than it did in the past. So I think that just following those guidelines is very helpful as well. And I'm sorry, but was there another section of that I didn't answer?
Well, no, but as a follow-up, someone asked, are we guaranteed a placement, or could we be rejected? Now, certainly we have some, if you're on academic probation, and that type of thing. But in general, if a student applies and submits a thoughtful and preference form and application, as you stated, it sounds like first go around, we place almost everybody, and then there's a process that follows.
Yes, however, and I'm gonna say this, and I hope that you listen, you may not be placed. And the students, it's always the same. The students who only choose higher demand sites are the ones who don't get placed. If you have, even if you have a very good application, if you don't have a stellar application, or if you don't have the qualifications, or not the qualifications, the qualities that the director for those sites are looking for, then you may not get placed. That's why we ask you really to look at all of we make you rate every project center. We want you to consider every single one, and really take your time and decide, would I be willing to go here? I know that some of you right now have your heart set on going into a particular place, and by all means, put that as very interested, but don't limit yourself. This is, so many of our students have not gotten what they consider their first choice, or have not been happy with their placement and gone on to have fantastic opportunities, fantastic experiences in some place that they never expected. So keep an open mind and be flexible with your scheduling if possible. I know that some majors and some outside commitments make that more difficult, but if you can be as flexible as possible and really keep an open mind.
And I'll just make another plug for the global fair, because, Deb's saying to really get to know the sites and understand the qualities that the project center directors are looking for, and what better opportunity than to talk to them and learn about the sites next week. So please, if you guys haven't already, mark your calendars for next Wednesday afternoon, 2 to 4 in the rec center, because that will
Thanks,
certainly
Kathleen.
help.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And I am seeing just another question related to the application, or to clarify. If for whatever reason there was something that might appear to be, on something that's negative or stands out negatively in the application, is there a way to clarify or provide context around that?
Sure. So there are opportunities to do that. One of the sections that we have on the application is called, I forget, it's like the academic, I don't know, academic something. What it is we ask you if there is anything about your academic record or your transcript that you think does not reflect your actual ability, academic ability. A lot of you, and I know recently it's been so difficult with COVID and online classes, and there's been some difficulty on our campus, and so a lot of students, it has affected them academically, and we understand that. And so there is a section where you can explain that to us, how you may have been affected by something that went on to affect your academic performance. There's also, if you've had any incidents, judicial incidents, you may be asked to briefly explain them on the application as well. So there are areas where you can talk a little bit more about yourself, and maybe speak to some of those negative, or not necessarily negative, but things that might concern you in your application. To get them in front of us so that we understand where you're coming from.
Great. And also a question came in just about the placement process, and if there were wait lists for project centers, or if for example, if someone were to withdraw or drop out of a project center, opening up a spot, how might we fill that, or if there's an opportunity to be on a wait list?
We do not keep a wait list. If you are not placed in the process, you are just not placed at that time, and you are without an IQP for a short period of time. Our placements are made on December, I believe this year it's December 20th, and you're expected to commit to your placement by January 17th. So shortly after January 17th, I look at all of the students who have committed and all of those who have declined their placement, and I put together a list of openings that we have from students who declined placements, sites that may not have been filled in the application process. And mid-February, we open up another what we call a supplemental application process. And this is a smaller process. It usually doesn't have, well, it never has the same breadth of programs that we offer now in this A-term application process. But there are programs out there with openings, and students who didn't get a placement the first time around are invited to reapply for any open spaces. We do this 4 times a year: February, April, July, and September. So there are plenty of opportunities. It's not an all or nothing thing with the IQP application process. But one thing I'd really like to point out is, if you aren't placed, if you were placed in a place that you may not be able to go to, let our office know. We want you to be on our radar. We want to help you find a project. And to do that, we need to know what your needs are and sort of where you are, so that we can try to make sure that by your junior year, you have an IQP that you can participate in.
And then I'm getting a lot of questions about which sites are considered to be the high demand sites.
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the how to apply video, the link is on our website. I suggest everybody look at that video, because that's really, it answers basically all of the questions I'm answering today, and has little screens to help you out as well. But there's a list, and it's based on last year, but I can kind of name them all: Copenhagen, Melbourne, Wellington, Kyoto, Hawaii, Berlin. Those are Cape Town. Those are top every year. These are very high demand year after year. Sometimes other project centers that become in demand, or if the project center is new this year, for some reason, students love a new opportunity and love to participate in something that is not, is different and nobody has done before. So keep a lookout for that list, and just be careful that you don't only include those project centers in your preference form.
Great, thank you. And then I also wanted to go back to some of the money related matters, because there's just some clarifying questions around the out-of-pocket versus billable costs. And so the question is, would students be expected to pay for things like flights and meals out of pocket and then reimbursed? So if the project center costs less than $5,000, would they be reimbursed for up to $1,500? If you could just quickly kind of explain that again for students, the differentiating between the billable costs and the out-of-pocket costs.
So reimbursed is not the right term for it, because you are it's basically paid ahead of, well, not ahead of time. It's paid ahead of time for plane tickets, because you need to purchase those in advance, but it's ahead of time for costs incurred while on project. Basically what it is you're not going to be receiving a check for $5,000 or for any amount up to $5,000. The amount of the billable and up to $1,500 for non-billable costs will be posted as a credit to your student account. And that thereby reducing your student account by the billable amount plus the up to $1,500 amount. So you will not get reimbursed for anything, unless this is only one condition in which you may get reimbursed. If somebody pays your whole bill for the term that you're going to be away, the complete bill, prior to the credit of $5,000 or up to $5,000 being made, then the $5,000 or up to $5,000 credit, you can request reimbursement of that amount. You will not get it, however, until after the drop add period for your project term. I know it's very confusing, and if anybody wants to talk to me about it specifically, you know, with your specific situation in mind, I'm happy to do that. The other resource I would suggest is talking to somebody in the Office of Financial Services. Oh, Kathleen, I think.
Yep, I saw that. Sorry. One other question about the global scholarship. Does it cover e-term IQPs, and are students, so does the global scholarship cover e-term IQPs? And if students are doing e-term IQPs, are they paying tuition in association with that?
So the global scholarship can be used for any of our programs, including e-term projects. It can be used for MQP, it can be used for HUA, and it will be posted to your account for the first project that you do. So if somebody decides I'm going to do my MQP first, if you're doing an off-campus MQP prior to your IQP, your global scholarship is going to be posted to your account for the MQP rather than the IQP. So it's not IQP specific. It's not term specific. So yes, the answer to that question is yes, it can be used for E, and it can be used for other projects. As far as the tuition for E-term projects, yes, you do have to pay tuition. An E-term project is worth the same as 3 courses. So it would be the same as 9 credits. So you would be paying that same amount. That said, and I don't know if this will happen again this year, but in the past few years, E-term has had a tuition discount of up to 50% for projects in the global project program. So as far as I know, that doesn't come out, that announcement of a reduction in tuition doesn't come out until much later. So I can't guarantee that for E23 or 24.
Great. And then another question just about the application process. Can you remind everybody first and foremost when the deadline is? And then the question that came in was, you know, what sort of follow-up or any other actions would need to be taken once the application has been submitted?
Okay, so the deadline is, I think it's a Monday, October 3rd. It's October 3rd at 9 a.m. is the deadline for getting both your IQP application form and your preference form in. If you did not have any judicial incidents on your record, that's the last thing you have to do. If you have a judicial incident, you'll receive an email from us to go back into your application and fill out a brief description of your judicial incident, just so that we have it on your application record. As far as anything else that you have to do after that, there's nothing. We will announce decisions on e-project December 20th. An email will go out. It will not have your exact placement on it. You would log into e-projects and it would show up on your dashboard. If some mistake is made in your application and we catch it, we may contact you after the deadline and give you the opportunity to go in and fix it, but we can't make any other changes after the deadline to your preference form or to your application.
Great. And then one other question for clarity's sake, because there are quite a few questions about doing e-term IQPs. This application that we've currently opened and the deadline of October 3rd also applies to e-term in the 23-24 academic year, correct?
Yes, we recruit for both e-terms. So we will be recruiting in this application process for E23, which is the upcoming summer, and E24, which is going to be the summer after your junior year, if you are a sophomore now.
Great. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the questions. One student has asked, you know, when do you suggest reaching out to references? I assume it's, you know, soon, right? October 3rd deadline, so soon now.
Yeah, it should be something really simple. We're not requiring you to get a letter of reference. We're just asking you to put the contact information of a WPI faculty member as your first reference. So email, phone number if you have it. And your second reference can be another faculty member, coach, boss, supervisor, faculty member at another college or institution, and that can be your second reference. They will not at any time have to submit a letter of reference. If for some reason we do contact a reference, we would do it by email. It would be short. I think there are 5 questions just speaking to your academic abilities and just, you know, how do you know the student and how have you worked with the student and would you recommend them for an off-campus? Normally the only time references are contacted is if a student might have a borderline application. And what I mean by that is if the student's GPA is maybe if you're on warning and your essays show maybe that you didn't put a lot of effort into them, and so your application is a little bit on the weak side, we might want to fortify that by asking your reference, you know, contacting your reference to get to back up your application if it's particularly weak. Other than that, we don't normally reach out.
Great. I think most questions have been answered related to references, just because this one just came in. Is there a downside, excuse me, to choosing someone as a reference who's not associated with WPI as a second reference?
As a second reference?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there is no downside. No, we understand that, you know, you are now just starting your sophomore year. Hopefully you've made some sort of relationship with at least one of your faculty, but we understand that if there are other people who might be able to speak better or, you know, more fully to your abilities, who is not a faculty member.
Great. Another question, just a very simple one. How long does the IQP last, whether it's on campus or off campus? Do they differ during a term?
The off-campus IQP is 7 weeks. You know, give or take a day here, depending on holidays, this, that, but 7 weeks. It's a 7 week. On campus can differ. They can be 3 7-week terms. Sometimes if things are moving slowly, you might prolong your IQP. If your advisor is on board with that, you might be able to finish it up more quickly. They're all meant to be the equivalent of 3 courses. And so if you do an on-campus, you might do the equivalent of 2 courses in one term and 1 in the next. So that really varies, and it may vary in time as well.
Great. One more question about the references, and we've got about a minute left before we wrap up, but can a faculty advisor be used as a WPI reference?
A faculty advisor? Yes, of course. Yep.
Okay.
A faculty advisor is a great reference for your WPI faculty member reference. Great.
Well, we are right up against the hour, so I think we'll leave it there. And we hope to see all of you guys next week at the fair. If not, please contact us. We will share the recording, the slides, all of the links with you guys. And thank you, Deb, for providing such wonderful information for all of us today.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the help, and thank you all for attending. And please watch the videos. Go to our website and check out the videos in our newsletter because it has everything I said today and more. Thanks for attending.